Friends from the media, good afternoon. Welcome to the press briefing. The chief executive and government officials will say a few words before taking questions. Because of the epidemic, please observe social distancing measures. I'll give the floor to Mrs. Carrie Lam, the chief executive. Friends from the media, fellow citizens, good afternoon. In the past day, there has been a rapid change in the COVID pandemic situation, which has caused us to be worried about the epidemic situation in Hong Kong. And therefore, this morning, I convened an urgent internal meeting. And in the first instance, I'm going to announce to the public our measures to tackle the new situation, because it involves Omicron, this highly transmissible variant, which is also rampant in the U.S. and European countries. And the Department of Health will give an analysis of the changes involving the Omicron variant. Anyway, in the past 24 hours, we have seen a few community cases, and we are worried that there might be silent transmission chains present in the community. As regards the number of infection chains, we are not too sure now, but then for one cluster involves a young man who lives in Tuen Mun and works in North Point. He has no travel history, and according to information from him, he has never been in contact with any confirmed cases, and he is not a close contact of confirmed cases, and so the mode of transmission is not sure. But as far as gene sequencing is concerned, now we have imported cases due to violation of rules on the part of aircrew members, and I believe that is not really a source or case with unknown source. Well, probably is epidemiologically linked to an imported Omicron case, but then the way of transmission is not clear. And of course, there is another dancing cluster leading to confirmed cases, and they have close contacts. And some of the close contacts went on a cruise to nowhere. And then yesterday, we arranged for the cruise to return to Hong Kong earlier than planned, and over 3,000 odd passengers are now subject to mandatory quarantine. So, as I said, I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Lam for a clear analysis. But for the number of confirmed and preliminary confirmed cases at 4:30 p.m., Dr. Zhang Chok-kwan from the Center for Health Protection will give you details. Now, if you have kept track of what's happening overseas, you understand that the Omicron variant is highly transmissible, and the transmission is very rapid. It is said that one person can, with a very short period of time, infect 10 persons. So the number of transmission in the community can grow geometrically. Well, although, as I said, we have a known source as from imported Omicron case, then the way of transmission is not yet certain, and the speed of transmission is different from previous mutant strains. So this is a very alarming signal. According to our investigation, now, for some confirmed cases, they had a lot of activities before they were aware of there being confirmed cases. So for compulsory testing notices, CTNs, they cover over 60 locations, places people have been to, and public transport people have been on. So, although we have yet to see a new wave or the fifth wave of outbreak, I think we're at the verge of another outbreak. So maybe within a few hours, we will have this new situation. So since last night, and I have been in contact with Dr. Sophia Chan, and this morning we convened an internal meeting. I had a briefing personally from the Center for Health Protection, and I've just explained to you our assessment. My view is that given the very dire situation of the pandemic, we have to grasp this very critical moment. We have to contain the pandemic to ensure that there will not be a major outbreak in the community again. Now, I think we are raising with Omicron this highly transmissible variant. So if we win, then we'll be able to contain the spread of Omicron in society. So the measures I'm going to announce may be the most decisive and rapid and targeted and comprehensive for the past 2 years, so that we can cut the transmission chains as soon as possible. So we should stop imported cases and also stop the spread of the virus in society. So I will explain these measures to you.
In terms of prevention of importation of cases, given the rampant transmission of Omicron globally, if we continue to have inbound flights, then each day we will have a high number of imported cases each day. These are identified during the test and hold at the airport. Many of the patients are infected with Omicron viruses. They have to be treated at hospitals and isolated. This is causing a lot of strain for our hospitals. Dr. Tony Ko from the Hospital Authority will update us on our capacity to treat and isolate these patients in a moment. Yesterday, the surge of imported cases was already serious. In the past 4 weeks, the case doubled each week. 4 weeks ago, we only had 20 cases. And this week, as at the 3rd of January, we had 123 cases. Yesterday, the 4th of January, we had 36 imported cases in a single day. Even if the number does not surge in the coming days, the tally this week will be the double of the number last week. The increase is drastic, and it is causing a strain on our public hospitals. Our previous measures have been effective. For example, the circuit breaker mechanism. Since we have tightened the circuit breaker condition, now we have only 22 inbound routes. Still, we have to be decisive in preventing importation of cases to prevent the hospital authority from being overwhelmed. 2 years ago, as I said, the priority is to protect our healthcare system. If it is overwhelmed, then it would be very bad. We have considered the places of origins where Hong Kong residents are coming back before deciding the measures today. Starting the 12 a.m., starting from 0 hours on the 8th of January until 0 hours of 21st of January, we will invoke the circuit breaker mechanism for flights from 8 origins. In other words, civic passenger flights will be suspended from these 8 countries. Those who have been to these 8 countries will not be allowed to board flights bounding for Hong Kong, which means that interchange flights will be suspended as well. For those who depart from a place other than the 8 countries but have been to these 8 countries before, they will not be allowed to board flights as well. These 8 places are Australia, Canada, France, India, Pakistan, the Philippines, the UK, and the US. If you have paid attention, you would notice that most of our imported cases are from these places. We hope that this measure can drastically cut down the imported cases to Hong Kong. We understand that this measure would cause inconvenience to Hong Kong residents who have already booked a flight or those who need to come to Hong Kong for business purpose. Itinerary and plans would be disrupted. We understand that. However, the situation in Hong Kong is deteriorating. Without this measure, the public health would be in jeopardy and our previous efforts would be in vain. That's why we have to take decisive actions. So I hope the public can understand that. In terms of preventing local outbreak, we will tighten social distancing measures as well. And we will do so in a prompt manner. The extent would be similar to those in during the 3rd and the 4th wave. We have to reduce the number of people on the streets and prevent unnecessary gathering and non-essential visiting. As I said, we have untraceable cases. And also, we are not sure about the way of transmission for some cases. We are not clear whether the patients got infected from social gathering, meals gathering, or whatsoever. That's why we have to reduce the activities and require members of the public to follow our directions, including compulsory testing or restriction and testing declarations. Specifically, these measures include the following. We have to be prompt, but now it is already 4 p.m. If these measures come into effect tonight, then it would cause a lot of inconvenience. That's why we are giving it one more day. The following measures will take effect starting 0 hours on Friday, that is the 7th of January, for 4 days, for 14 days until the midnight of the 20th of January. It would supersede the announcements yesterday that the social distancing measures would be maintained until the 6th of January. The new set of social distancing measures will take effect until the 20th of January. These include the following. First, all major events will be cancelled and unnecessary gatherings have to be called off. Let me give you some examples. Some major events will be cancelled. These include the event on Friday, that is a local farm fest, as well as the Hong Kong Cycling Fest, which we have been preparing for a long time. I know that a lot of cycling enthusiasts are looking forward to this cycling fest, but it has to be cancelled. And of course, it also includes the meetings scheduled for the new Legislative Council, including the tea gathering tomorrow, which I will host, as well as the meal gathering of the newly elected Legislative Council members. These will have to be cancelled. The policy bureaus will update stakeholders in due course. Second, catering business. This is a very hard decision. However, we have to be decisive, tough, and quick to prevent the spread of Omicron in Hong Kong. We have to adopt the following measures. That is, after 6 p.m., all dining services will be banned. In other words, between 6 p.m. to 4:59 a.m. the following day, there can be no dine-in service. For dine-in service outside dinner hours, these will be tightened as well. For those operating under Model B, C, or D, the maximum headcount for each table will be 2 for B, 4 people for Category C restaurants, and 6 people for Category D restaurants. The capacity will remain unchanged. We want customers to be seated far apart for safety. Performance, dancing, as well as karaoke and mahjong, tinkao activities will have to be suspended as well. And also bars and wine houses will be suspended as well. 59 other premises which are scheduled premises, or 15 premises under 500F will have to be closed, including game arcades, beauty parlors, gyms, theme parks, including performing venues, museums, and so on, entertainment venues, party rooms, beauty parlors, nightclubs, karaoke, mahjong, tinkao establishments, massage parlors, sports centers, swimming pools, and cruises will be closed, as well as activity rooms. For those not regulated by 599F, but are venues under the purview of LCSD, they will be closed as well. The LCSD will release a press release about that in due course. The other, for guest house and convention centers, if it is a bar or wine club inside a private club, or if they are one of the 15 scheduled premises, they will have to be closed as well. But we will not ask the entire hotel or private club to suspend operation. For catering premises inside these venues, they will be subject to the regulations I mentioned as well. Another measure is suspending local tours and all cruises and all cruise to nowhere. A cruiser company has announced that a cruise to nowhere scheduled for departure tomorrow will be cancelled. For high-risk places like residential care homes and so on, we will have to suspend visiting. With visitors, more risk will be brought to the patients and elderly people. So besides discretionary visits, all visits will be suspended. Social gathering ban will be of 4 people, and masking requirements will be in place. All the measures will start from 0 hours on Friday, 7th of January for 14 days. The development of Omicron is very fluid. It comes quickly, and hopefully it will go away quickly as well. So in 7 days' time, that is 7 days from 7th of January, we will review the relevant measures to see whether further tightening is required or if we can relax it. And also, in 7 days' time, we will be able to update you on whether events can occur after 14 days. The priority is to contain the outbreak. From experience overseas, we can see that once there is an outbreak of Omicron, there is no containing it. And this is also a huge pressure for Hong Kong because we are adopting the most stringent isolation and treatment plans as well as quarantine arrangements.
With the full cooperation of the community, and if these measures prove to be effective, we hope that before the Chinese New Year, we'll be able to contain the situation so that members of the public can spend a happy Chinese New Year. Of course, I'd like to appeal to everyone in Hong Kong, be vigilant, take care of personal hygiene, and refrain from unnecessary outings, stay at home as far as possible, but then you have to be tested as instructed by the government. And for those who have yet to be vaccinated, do so as soon as possible, whether we're talking about the first jab or the booster. We should keep an eye on the capacity of our community testing centers as well as community vaccination centers to serve the public. I will now give the floor to Dr. Raymond Lam, Director of Health, to brief us on the state of transmission leading to such stringent measures, and then we'll give the floor to the hospital authority. Thank you. See, in the past 24 hours, we have seen a major change in the local epidemic situation. I'd like to report to you our risk assessment. As at yesterday, we had 114 Omicron-related cases, as said by the chief executive. The number of imported cases, more and more of the important cases are Omicron cases, over 90% of them. In fact, globally, in the past 2 weeks, there were additional 11 million new COVID cases, leading to over 1 million deaths over the world. Omicron has spread to over 110 countries. So the pressure from imported cases will only continue to rise. We are recording over 30 cases per day. If this trend is to go on, it will be tremendous pressure on our healthcare system and our quarantine facilities. In the past 24 hours, things have deteriorated rapidly because we have seen a local cluster arising from imported cases. The index patient is 12676. Now, according to our epidemiological studies, we are of the view that there are more than one transmission chain in the community, and it is spreading widely. In investigating the cluster, I would like to report to you some of the characteristics to let you know the risks. Now, for many of the cases in this cluster, the CT value was low, many of them below 20. In other words, the viral load was high. So we believe the risk of further transmission from this cluster is going to be strong and high. And for cases in this cluster, they have been to different places in the community, taking part in a variety of activities, indoor gatherings and party gatherings and dancing, dining, etc. So the infections involved friends, family members, and even among strangers. And for the mode of transmission, some took part in outdoor public places. And the distance between two cases were quite far away. Usually, for people wearing masks, the risk of infection or transmission is usually low, but that is not the case for this cluster. So the risk of transmission associated with the Omicron strain is very high. And then in this cluster, many of the confirmed cases with high viral load has not been vaccinated. Now, for those who have been vaccinated, they may be asymptomatic, and or the viral load may not be that high, and so they could evade testing, and or they were not picked up by testing, and therefore the risk is even higher. We believe the pandemic has spread in the community, and we are at a very critical juncture. We must take decisive and stringent measures to stop the further transmission of the chains. The chief executive has just announced a number of measures. The Center for Health Protection will do our very best in contact tracing and quarantine arrangements. As for the community, I strongly appeal to the public. Now, if you've been to places where the confirmed cases have been to, we will issue mandatory testing notices. Please take note. We expect such locations to increase. So please be very vigilant. If you have been to these places, do be tested as soon as possible. And if you feel unwell, or if you're aware that you might have been in contact with a high-risk person, seek medical help as soon as possible. And as I said, it appears that in this cluster, those who have been vaccinated were not infected. So we would like to take this opportunity to appeal to you once again. About 30% of our population has yet to be vaccinated. When Omicron is in the community, for those who are unvaccinated, well, the risk and also the gravity of being infected will be much higher. According to our joint scientific committees, our recommendation is for those who have been vaccinated to receive a booster as soon as possible. And I must appeal to healthcare workers. You must be very, very vigilant. If you encounter patients with mild symptoms, you should encourage or ask them to be tested as soon as possible to get results. And may I remind you once again that you should be vaccinated as soon as possible, observe hand hygiene, wear face mask, and avoid unnecessary travel. Thank you. Dr. Ko from HA. Thank you. Good afternoon. The chief executive and also Dr. Lam have mentioned that we have obvious increase in the number of COVID cases in the past few weeks. And the number of admissions resulting from infection has also risen. In the past Sunday, we reactivated our 500 board beds in Asia World Expo on Lantau North to be prepared. As said by Dr. Lam, most of the cases were Omicron cases. As we all know, these cases are more infectious, so we expect these patients need longer hospitalization. Most of these cases will be treated at Asia World Expo and also the North Lantau Hospital. There are over 340 cases requiring a quarantine, and we have about 800 beds at the Infection Control Center at Lantau North. If we are talking about 40 to 50 cases per day, then within 4 or 5 days, we will be hard-pressed for beds because beds for infection cases are different. When the occupancy rate is about 70%, is close to saturation for infection control reasons, and also the time for turnover. So we have to prepare for the current situation. Overseas, as said by Dr. Lam, we might already have silent transmission chains in society. You may recall that during the third and fourth outbreaks, the number of confirmed cases per day could rose from several tens to a few hundreds per day. And from overseas experience, the number of Omicron cases could grow geometrically or explosively. So we have to be prepared. Apart from Asia World Expo and also the Northland Town Hospital, we are now reviewing our first-line beds in public hospitals. Now our burden is we are in winter, and we have now reached our winter surge. Our surgical beds are already 100% full. If you have noticed our daily releases, so different clusters are now moving some of their patients, because when the pandemic is stable, we have to take care of patients admitted for other reasons. So we have to make available beds should there be a flood of cases from the community. We have beds available. We're also reviewing our ICU facilities. Among the few hundred COVID cases we now have, including Omicron cases, most of them are in stable condition. But then we are now admitting mainly patients who have been vaccinated. As said by Dr. Lam, according to literature and overseas experience, unvaccinated confirmed cases are likely to have more serious symptoms. So if we have a community outbreak, then there will be tremendous pressure on our hospital beds. As we all know, we have a few tens of percentage of the population not yet vaccinated. Most of them are elderly persons. So may I appeal to the public, if you haven't been vaccinated, do so as soon as possible. Our elderly citizens, in particular, should there be an outbreak, you can be in a very risky situation.
From the perspective of the hospital authority, we will strengthen our infection control measures. Like Dr. Lam said, we would enhance screening of patients. Some of the cases yesterday were identified as the A&ED upon screening by our colleagues. If you have to visit our general outpatient clinic or A&ED, if you have any contact history, or if you have any travel history, or if you are at risk of contacting with patients, please notify our colleagues to arrange a test. Like the Chief Executive mentioned, we will suspend regular visiting. For special cases, we will deal with these cases with discretion. We call for the public's understanding. Thank you. Now we open the floor for questions. We still have the briefing at 4:30 p.m., so please limit your questions to 2. And please use our mic to ask your questions and identify your media organization. The lady at the back. I'm from Commercial Radio. Now the air crew, the female air crew member, did she depart on a passenger flight and return on a cargo flight? Is there a loophole? And also, what about home isolation? Now we have a loophole causing the imminent 5th wave. As the chief commander against the epidemic, should the chief executive take responsibility, or should the secretary for transport and housing take the responsibility? As we all know, on the 31st of December, I summoned the management of Cathay Airline, including the chief executive and the chairman of Cathay. I directed them I told them the society is bearing the cost because aircrew members did not follow the isolation and quarantine rules. They flouted the rules. As the top management of the Cathay Airline, I understand that they may not be aware of the individual behavior of colleagues. Still, they have to take responsibility in terms of corporate governance. An investigation is required. Reports will have to be submitted to the HKSAR, and internal punishment is needed. Like I said, we will follow up the issue seriously after studying the legal basis. Next question. The lady on the left.
TMHK. So why not require work from home and suspend schools now? Can you explain the rationale? Yeah, that's all.
Please.
So also, is forbidding dine-in services only after 6 is enough? Thank you.
Well, as I have said at my media stand-up yesterday, in the 2 years of fighting COVID-19, the most difficult decision for the chief executive is to decide what sort of measures to take, having regard to the epidemic situation, the various factors to be considered, and also knowing very well the impact. Normally, it would be the adverse impact of the measures that we are going to take, particularly in tightening these social measures. So it is not an easy decision. But having regard to the transmissibility of Omicron, as we have seen in other parts of the world, and also the not entirely satisfactory vaccination rate in Hong Kong, and also the latest public health advice given to me about these cases, which they might be related to an imported case, but the route or the channel of transmission is not entirely clear. So the advice given to me by my colleagues in the public health arena is we are facing a very dire situation of a major community outbreak anytime. And that's why we have to take very decisive measures. But of course, in taking the decisive measures, we also have to consider some very genuine situations. So you are right that compared with all the drastic measures we have taken previously, there are two measures that we have deliberated very fully this morning, but decided that we will not put them in place in exactly the same way as previously. One is civil servants work from home. Of course, I would encourage private companies to allow their employees, wherever possible, to work from home, because the ultimate objective is to reduce people flow, to reduce congestion on public transport, and hence to reduce the chance of infection. But for civil servants to work from home, our experience is, one is we have a lot of civil servants who have duties to do. And in dealing with this epidemic, there are even more duties for the civil servants to do. If you go visit one of those restricted testing notice in a district, in a small area, or in a buildings, we have to mobilize hundreds of civil servants and staff to operate. So it is not entirely realistic to carve out some of the civil servants who could work from home. But having said that, the Civil Service Bureau would advise the various departments that if a department has staff who could continue to deliver the service without coming back to office, without seeing their customers face to face, they will continue to do it. Just like I will be canceling a lot of face-to-face meetings, I have canceled my appearance in the Asian Financial Forum next Monday. I will do an online message to this very important forum held annually. So all these are refinements in order to achieve the objective of reducing people flow, but without introducing a drastic policy of allowing a certain percentage of civil servants not to come to the office, because that would seriously affect the service to the public. You may remember the situation when postmen were put work from home. So they can't even deliver the essential goods and letters to the people of Hong Kong. So that's our consideration of not putting in place the same policy of work from home. But I would imagine that some of my civil service colleagues will not be coming back to office because they could meet the requirement of providing service without coming back to office. And even for those who come back to office, they will be asked to come in stagger hours. They will be asked to go out to lunch stagger hours, which will achieve a similar purpose, but without undermining our service to the community. Now, as far as suspension of face-to-face learning, I sort of mentioned this at my media stand-up yesterday, this is one of the most difficult decisions. I can take a decision to cancel events, dinners, and so on, knowing that they will have an impact on the business. But one would not say that they have a very major consequence. But not to allow young students to come to school, not having this face-to-face learning, significantly affecting their health, whether it's their mental health or their physical health. And schools have been highly cooperative in arranging the resumption of these classes for a very long time. And so far, they've been working well. So for the time being, we feel that for the benefit and the interest of the children, and of course also their parents, because if the kids are not going to school and the parents couldn't look after them, there will be major problems as well. So for the time being, we are not suspending classes. So, but we will be sending a very strong advice to the schools that they would have to be doubly cautious in enforcing and all the precautionary measures in looking after their students. So those are the two major considerations in not putting in place the two measures that you have highlighted.
下一條。
Next question. The gentleman in front. I'm from Dot News. Most of the vaccination centers have long queues, and for private clinics that offer vaccination services, they are also very crowded. So the public are worried that we do not have enough vaccines. What is the stockpile? Will the government operate more vaccination centers? Will there be more vaccination centers at hospitals, etc., to boost the capacity? Professor Yuen Kwok-yung said that when vaccination rate has reached 90%, then we can follow the strategy adopted by Singapore and the UK, that is to live with the virus. Will we adopt a similar strategy? And if the virus is always here, does that mean that our borders cannot be reopened? I'll take the second question, and then Professor Chen will brief you on the stock of vaccines we have. We announced yesterday that by the 24th of February, more premises will be included in the vaccine bubble. The purpose exactly is to boost our vaccination rate. Since the idea was mentioned, indeed, there have been more people going to vaccination centers to receive the jabs. So as I said, we'll closely monitor the situation. Where necessary, we will boost their capacity. Although these vaccination centers have boosted their operation from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. around the week. And then there will also be vaccination stations in hospitals. As regards the target vaccination rate and its corresponding measures, is hard for me to say now. From 10 p.m. to 4 p.m. today, the pandemic situation has already changed drastically. So it is hard for us to say what will happen when the vaccination rate has reached a certain percentage. In any event, a higher vaccination rate is for sure conducive to protecting Hong Kong and conducive to helping Hong Kong to move out of the pandemic and to create favorable conditions for borders reopening. So we must boost the vaccination rate. Professor Chen. Thank you, CE. As mentioned by the Chief Executive, since we mentioned the importance of a vaccine bubble and also with changes in the epidemic situation, you might have noticed that the vaccination rate as well as the number of people coming forward to receive the vaccines have been rising quite substantially. On the one hand, the government has announced that starting from the 1st of January, we would boost our vaccination services. The community vaccination centers are operating longer hours every day. And for those who have received Comirnaty for 6 months can get a booster. And we've also increased vaccination points. HA hospitals have got 2 additional vaccination stations. And just today we released a press release that there will be a second mobile COVID vaccination station to come into operation this Sunday. And last night we had over 18,000 people who received the first jab, and for those who received a booster, it was 16,000 yesterday. Both are record highs. So we'll closely monitor the situation, whether we're talking about the situation of vaccination centers and private GP clinics, and some medical groups have also been added to provide vaccination of Comirnaty vaccine. Of course, we do not rule the possibility of reopening some community vaccination centers should demand be high, because this is something we would like to see. And you might have also noticed that those who are over 12 are eligible to take the vaccines. We all care for our children, and the Joint Scientific Committee under the Department of Health will convene a meeting as soon as possible to consider the possibility of vaccinating those below 12 years old, because approval has been given, but we have to do it in an orderly manner, and we will convene a meeting earlier, and the experts will give us advice. As for whether we have enough vaccines, you can rest assured we have at the steering committee review our stock, and I agree that the Food and Health Bureau can procure more vaccines from BioNTech in particular. BioNTech has always been very forthcoming. So to ensure the members of the public can receive the vaccines within the coming period, will ensure that there is sufficient supply. One more question. I'm from TVB. Chief Executive, at yesterday's press stand-up, you said that you will not consider tightening any social distancing measures. But then today you have tightened them substantially. Now, if you're really raising with Omicron, how come you've changed your mind within a day? Has there been any fault when it comes to decision-making in tightening the measures? And Dr. Lam said that because some vaccinated persons or confirmed cases were asymptomatic, and so there was silent transmission chains. So should people be vaccinated or not? After vaccination, we see silent transmission chains. Now, in a coming couple of weeks, all the slots for vaccination are taken up. Will you open more vaccination center? And is it that we have no hope of reopening the borders before the Chinese New Year? Well, I have got the transcript of my reply to the media at the media stand-up. I think I was very accurate. I was asked whether I had to tighten the social distancing measures. I said we were not at the right time to tighten the social distancing measures, because for all cases we have been able to trace the epidemiological links, because every case in the Moon Palace cluster has been identified during either testing or investigation. It's not that they have been moving around in the community without our knowledge. But then what happened in the past 24 hours caused us to worry and to be not so confident. Now, although from genetic sequencing, we could say that they were related to imported cases, but for a case, he hasn't been to Moon Palace, and he did not work or live near confirmed cases. And then there's also a dancing cluster and also close contacts on a cruise to nowhere, and we have to respond very rapidly when things change, and we have to take action. This time we are very decisive and sharp and swift. If you interview the catering industry, I'm sure there will be a lot of grievances because we have been rather stringent. I don't have time to convene the dozen or so experts today, but then when you interviewed Professor Gabriel Leung and Dr. Hong Fan Wei, and Dr. Hong was the only one who said that something had to be done immediately, and then Dr. Gabriel Leung and WhatsApp me last night, phoned me, texted me last night to said that something had to be done, and they all recommended that large events should be cancelled, and then social distancing measures should be tightened within a couple of days. So I disagree that we have been late in making these decisions. Now we have been a step ahead before further spread of the disease. But then for commercial premises, we haven't closed these commercial premises for a long time. I'm sure they are rather anxious because they cannot do business anymore. I ask for the understanding. We will take bold and stringent measures so that it's like within a very short period of time, it's like labor pains will be able to contain the pandemic. You may recall that last year we spent 5-6 months now from November 2020 to May 2021. It was only in May 2021 that I said here that with a new direction in fighting the virus and the fourth wave was finally over. I don't want to be in a high-risk situation anymore. I hope by taking swift and decisive and sharp action, we can contain the pandemic.
Director, please. About vaccination, from our study, we found that it is very noticeable that those who are unvaccinated have very high viral load. In other words, CT values are lower than 20. So the message for the public is that compared with the unvaccinated, the vaccinated would have lower viral load. With higher viral load, you would be more infectious and you would have a higher chance infecting others. And also because of the high viral load, if you are immunocompromised, the complications would be serious. For the vaccinated, we want to remind you not to have a false sense of security. In many cases, local and overseas, we see a lot of re-positive cases or infection among those vaccinated. Despite vaccination, we have to stay vigilant and observe all the measures, including social distancing, masking, and observe hand hygiene. Vaccination is not foolproof, but it is scientifically proven that vaccination can alleviate the symptoms, prevent serious complications, and reducing fatality. That is supported by empirical data. Like we have reported to you, the Joint Scientific Committee and the advisory group to the Chief Executive recommend a booster jab for those who have received 2 jabs, for those aged 18 or above. The T-cell reaction can protect the vaccinated from serious complications or fatality. And also, the booster jab can enhance the neutralizing effect of the T-cell. We have a lot of asymptomatic patients, vaccinated or not. In our clusters, we see asymptomatic patients. This will cause invisible transmission chain and causing a spread in the community. So we have to observe personal hygiene and get vaccinated with the hope to contain this wave of outbreak. Now I will invite Professor Chen to talk about the vaccination arrangements and then the resumption of cross-boundary travel. There is no cause for concern about the arrangements of vaccination. We are doing our best to review how we can increase the number of vaccination centers. Like I said, we do not rule out establishing more vaccination centers. And don't forget, we have more than 1,000 private doctors where vaccination is available. You simply have to make a booking with them. And also on our thematic website, we have listed out private clinics where BioNTech vaccination is available. The locations are available on our website. Please get a booking and get vaccinated. So we have vaccination centers, vaccination stations, some mobile, and we also have our private partners to help us. There are numerous ways for you to choose. Like I said yesterday, this round of outbreak involves the extremely infectious Omicron variant. Of course, it would affect the resumption of cross-boundary travel. Last September, with the full support of the central government, we have made a lot of preparation for resumption of cross-boundary travel, including expert-level meetings, four-day visits by the experts from the mainland, and also we have adjusted our way in announcing the figures so that our situation would be more transparent and more clear to the mainland. These efforts is not in vain. We only have to act quickly and contain the outbreak of Omicron in a short period of time, and then we can resume the work again. If we don't see any local infection or untraceable infection in the coming days, then we can resume work on cross-boundary travel. That's why I emphasized that we are being very heavy-handed right at the beginning. Unlike the previous outbreaks, we took gradual measures to tighten the social distancing measures. This time we are being very swift and heavy-handed. We want businesses to open during the Chinese New Year, and we want to resume a talk with the mainland authorities about resumption of cross-boundary travel. So we urge media friends and members of the public to join hands with us to contain the outbreak or prevent the outbreak. Thank you. This is the end of the media briefing. Thank you.